right, so in this next example that we're looking at, we're still thinking about the Martins and their 30-year mortgage that they're taking out. But what we're going to do is we're thinking about where we finished off with that last example. And we're going to repeatedly use our simple interest formula month to month throughout the entire course of the loan. So we're going to repeat it for the second month, the third month, the fourth month, so on and so forth. What that's going to do is then give us the table of information that we're looking at below. Right, so a list containing the payment number, payment on the interest, payment on the principal, and balance of the loan. Instead of doing it all by hand, generally these are done using a computer. Such a list is called a loan amortization schedule. And that's what we have in this picture below. So notice the information about the first two payments matches our example. So if we go back to the previous page, we look at our first interest payment was $1,234.63. Our first principal was $173.48. Our next interest, $1,233.61. Our next principal, $174.50. And if we compare those numbers to this table, we notice that what we have in these first two rows is exactly that. So our payment number, so the first month, first payment, there's our interest, which matches our previous example. There's our principal, which matches the previous example. After we subtract that principal, the balance of our loan is here. And then we use that to figure out payment number two. Payment number two, $1,233.61 in interest, $174.50 in principal. We subtract that, that gives us our new balance, then we can find payment three. And if we look at this, what we have here is just kind of a shortened version, right? Remember that this is a 30-year mortgage. 30 times 12 gives us 360. Right? So as we're looking at this, as our payments get closer and closer to the end, right? And then there's our payoff amount. Notice that our interest, right, starts decreasing. But notice that even after, 100 payments, our interest is still pretty high. It's not until we get down to the very end that our interest becomes low and most of the money is going towards the principal. Again, this is a common thing depending on who you are using for your financing. I know that my mortgage is through a bank, and when I go in and I look up information about my mortgage, this is something that I can look up. So it is something that should be readily available to you. Again, it's not something that you're going to have to go through and calculate by hand every time. But this just kind of shows that as we're looking at and we're thinking about taking out mortgages, a lot of the money that is being paid is actually interest. And unfortunately, that's just the way it works. So this is something we always talk about, when are we going to use math stuff from math class in real life? This is definitely something that is, it definitely applies to real life, right? Whether or not you have a mortgage already or you're, end up buying a house later on down the road. This idea of how much is principal, how much is interest, what is your interest rate, how long are you taking out the mortgage for? All of those things factor into these different types of problems. Our project that we're going to do over this chapter is going to be related to mortgages and kind of answering and comparing and doing some of these different types of things. So we'll definitely be talking a little bit more about mortgages in the next week. So as you start going through these problems and you're thinking about these, it's definitely something that you want to pay attention to as far as things that could be or will be useful to us in everyday life at some point.